This week, I take a simple mirror from our studio and turn it into something not as simple. It's time for a mega break. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Rob, and this week we look back at another one of the projects I did with my dad while I was still recovering from surgery. We had a very simple mirror that was in our studio, and my dad made the suggestion that we can make it look an awful lot nicer with a simple frame. So we headed to the shop, and this is how it went.
The mirror we had was just nothing special. It had been leaning up against a wall in our studio forever, looking more like it was waiting to be moved than it was waiting to be used. So we started with some pre-milled 1x6. After measuring the glass, my dad measured positioning for a rabbet. Now a rabbet is a sort of channel that you're going to cut into the wood that will allow the glass to rest inside the frame. To cut the rabbet, we really should have used a router table, but we didn't have one at the time, so instead, my dad made a simple jig for a trim router, and then carefully cut the rabbets into each piece. Next, we used pocket holes to secure all the butt joints. After it was all together, we spent plenty of time sanding it all down. Now at the last minute, my dad suggested that leaving the end grain of a butt joint exposed on top just wasn't good enough, so he quickly put together a cap, he rounded over the edges, and secured it with glue and our brad nailer, and that made a big difference. After that, I decided to sand it one more time using 220 grit sandpaper, not only to make it feel nice, but to make the stain look more uniform as well. And then it was time to put on that stain. I decided to use a dark walnut. I like to apply stain using shop rags. First, I laid it on real thick against the grain, and then I would quickly wipe off the excess with a second rag, this time with the grain, and the results are absolutely beautiful. After it dried, I dropped in the mirror just to test the fit, and of course, since my dad made the rabbet, it fit perfectly. Now to hold the mirror in place, I grabbed some scrap 1/4-inch ply and cut off 6 tabs. Then I used some sanding blocks to sand down all the edges to make them nice and smooth. I put all 6 in place and screwed a few pilot holes with countersinks for the screws, but at that point I realized if I didn't stain the tabs, it would drive me nuts, so I quickly did that off camera. When they dried, I carefully screwed them all into place by hand as to not over tighten them and risk cutting through the front or shattering the tabs. After blowing off the sawdust, it was time to take it outside for a few beauty shots, and would you look at that? Such a huge improvement with very little effort. Always love that.
If I'm being honest, this dark color wasn't exactly what I was planning on doing, but once I saw it finished, I was glad that I did. It turned out absolutely beautiful and really brought out the grain in this pine. Overall, it was a fairly simple project to do. It wasn't that expensive, and it just looks a whole lot better. I want to thank Hart for sponsoring this episode and reminding us that we can build anything we can imagine if we do it with heart. All right, guys, break's over. Go make something.